Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Family Garden Plan. Grow a year's worth of sustainable and healthy food by Melissa K. Norris, narrated by Chelsea Stevens. Publisher's note: this audiobook includes bonus material. Please visit Tantor.com and type The Family Garden Plan into the search box. Follow the link to the book's page. Then, under the supplemental content section, please enter the access code STRAWBERRY, and then click the unlock button to access the bonus material. The code should be entered in all lowercase letters. All charts, recipes, checklists, plans, and worksheets referenced in this audiobook can be found in the bonus material. Introduction. Growing a garden is as much food for the soul as it is for the body. There is little more satisfying, or delicious, than walking out your back door and picking a fresh, vine-ripened tomato, or filling a colander full of carrots and beets with soil still lingering on the roots. Watching the cycle of a garden, from the dormant earth, first seed sprouting, producing the harvest, and then gifting us with another seed to perform the cycle again, is like witnessing a small miracle each year. My heart is filled with a gratefulness for the way the good Lord created this earth and the food to nourish our bodies that I don't find in the same depth when purchasing off the store shelf. After all, God is the creator. This world and the very depth of nature we see before us is His canvas and design. Watching it up close, how the chill of winter is necessary for production of fruit and some seeds to sprout, to the rains of spring so those seeds can germinate, and the summer warmth to bring everything to fruition and harvest, is a testimony to His hand. Yet there are springs when the rains aren't bountiful, the sun is scorching, and plants die. And it's in these times, perhaps, I'm more appreciative of the harvest I get, knowing even when the earth doesn't work with me the way I'd like, God will provide and teach me as I go. It used to be almost every household had, at the very least, a small kitchen garden where they grew some of their own food. In much of today's mainstream society, we've traded our connection to our food and land for the convenience of having someone else grow it for us. But you and I, my friend, because I consider all other gardeners friends, we know the importance and joy of raising nourishing and healthy food for ourselves and our family that goes well beyond the plate and pocketbook. I found gardening to be one of the simplest and most complex things there is. It really is as simple as plopping a seed into the soil, providing some sunlight and water, and letting it grow. But on the other hand, the condition of the soil, growing zones, pest management, and any number of other things come into play in determining whether that plant will thrive and provide you with a bountiful harvest. I come from a long line of gardeners. Some of my earliest memories are of springs filled with planting the garden, snapping beans alongside my father, and filling up the jars for the pressure canner alongside my mother. I hail from people who made their living from the land, and if they didn't raise or grow it themselves, they would have gone hungry. My husband and I, along with our 2 children, raise all our own meat and over half of our fruits and vegetables for the year on 14.96 acres here in the foothills of the North Cascade Mountain Range of Washington State. As we strive to increase what we grow and preserve each year, we've learned a lot. More from the failures than the successes, though thankfully we have more successes now than when we first started some 19 years ago. No matter how many times I've grown the same crop or raised a garden, I learn something new every year and season. A garden will teach you many lessons, and only some of them are about food. It is my aim with this book to walk you through what I've been blessed to learn, what other gardeners who have gone before me have shared, and to help you raise just a little bit more of your own food than you did the year before. I don't believe it's possible for one book to cover every area of gardening. Exhausting every facet of composting, permaculture, and seed saving are all separate books. But I will cover what you need to know to have a solid foundation to raise your own fruits, vegetables, and herbs from planning and planting to harvesting. I'll give you tips to implement and extra resources should you need to dive in deeper than we will in this book. Deal? Good. Let the growing begin. Planning your food crops. 1. Planning your food crops. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 3. A customized plan based on your family's needs, space, and gardening zone is one of the often most overlooked but critical steps to a successful growing season and harvest. One of the biggest mistakes we made in our early years of homesteading, my husband and I both agree, is that we didn't keep the best of records when we started out. The small amount of planning done now will guide you throughout your entire year of gardening and ensure you're raising food and crops your family will put to good use. Because, let's face it, it doesn't matter if we have a huge garden if it's full of foods our family doesn't like and we're not eating. Whether this is your first year or you're a gardening veteran, planning will serve you well. We do this every winter as we gear up for the growing season. No one garden is the same, nor should it be. Your garden will evolve and change every year, a living canvas for the gardener to erase his mistakes and hone his talent. You'll find my planning very practical. I believe in planting what my family enjoys and eats the most. Alas, I've not found a chocolate plant that will grow here, but raspberries are a close second, and can be preserved to stock our pantry for the off-season. Creating a customized garden plan. No matter if you've been planting and preserving for years or this is your first year, we'll start by going to our cupboards and freezers. Look at your current pantry and freezer and take note of which foods you eat on a regular basis. Keep track of the meals and foods you're consuming regularly. If you use a written meal plan, this is already done for you. Do you have spaghetti, chili, or something with tomato sauce in it weekly? What frozen or canned vegetables are you using on a consistent basis? Don't forget the spice and herb cupboard. Document this, write it all down, and keep a record of what you'd use in an average month. Then, multiply out for a year. Use the Food Needs for a Year worksheet at the end of this chapter to help you do so. This step lets you know what and how much to plant for the current year's gardens. Example from my kitchen. When I went through this process, I found in January that I had 18 jars of tomato sauce left. Our typical first large harvest of tomatoes, enough to make sauce, isn't until August. I can use approximately 2 jars a month if I don't want to purchase any from the store. This past year, I tried a new type of tomatoes and didn't grow as many paste tomato plants as I usually do. I made a note to go back to 20 plants of San Marzano lungo, too. With 27 jars of cucumber pickles left, at a jar a week until main harvest time, we have plenty. We generally don't eat an entire quart of pickles in 1 week. This means having 3 hills, 9 plants, of pickling cucumbers is the perfect amount for our current needs. I go through this process with all my preserved foods, including dehydrated, canned, and frozen food. Using the Food Needs for a Year worksheet, evaluate how much food you have left from last year's garden, or how much you need to feed your family for a year of each crop. Now it's time to plan what crops and how much of them you'll be planting for your family's needs. It's important to note, this will likely change every year. 1 year I had 30 jars of salsa left over. I didn't can any salsa that year. Instead, I used up what we had. Some years I preserve a double amount of a crop and skip growing it the following year. Best practice is to use home canned goods in 12 to 18 months. It's crucial that you go through your inventory each year and not run on autopilot. Right now, my son is hitting his teenage years, aka eating a lot more food. My daughter loves pickles. She didn't used to. Over the years, we eat more of some things or less, and the beauty and point of growing your own food is that you can tailor your harvest to your exact needs. Your growing season. Gardening zones and first and last frost dates will determine what you can grow and when to plant it. Basically, your entire gardening season depends upon these dates. To search online for your gardening zone information, type into the search bar your zip code, city, and state with the words average first and last frost date and gardening zone. It's also wise to ask an experienced gardener in your area if possible. With the widespread use of social media, you can even find gardening groups online in your specific area. These can be gold mines of information, especially when it comes to microzones and microclimates. Your gardening zone allows you to know which plants will grow and thrive in that specific location. The USDA hardiness map divides North America into zones based on the average annual minimal winter temperature using 10-degree Fahrenheit increments. You can access the map at https://planthardiness.ars.usda.gov/phzmweb/. After identifying your gardening zone and first and last frost dates, you'll want to look at microzones. What is a microzone? Microzones are smaller growing zones within your larger gardening zone based on the USDA hardiness guidelines. For example, according to multiple sources, I am the larger gardening zone 8A with the last average frost date, when I can safely plant warm weather plants in the spring, of April 8th, and first average frost date of November 3rd. This information supposedly applies to our whole county, but because I've lived and gardened on this same stretch of land my entire life, I know this isn't true. If you drive toward the ocean an hour away from us, you'll find the information fairly accurate. But we live in the foothills of the Cascades and sometimes experience extreme winter low temperatures for a week or two that would put us much closer to gardening zone 6 for frost dates and average winter temps of 7B. The first average hard frost date for us, a killing frost that wipes out your warm weather crops, is usually the first part of October. We can experience light frost as early as the middle to end of September. We've also had frost as late as May 1st and never plant our warm weather crops until mid-May, sometimes as late as Memorial Day weekend. This is about 2 to 3 weeks later than our neighbors down the mountain and lower in the valley. This gives us about a 150-day growing season for warm weather crops between the frost dates. You can see why it's important to take note of frosts in your area, talk to longtime gardeners, and use the online information as your guideline. Record your gardening zone, frost dates, and growing season in the growing season worksheet at the end of the chapter. Armed with this information, you can begin to select which plants will grow in your area and which varieties to plant. When viewing seed packets, you'll often see an indication of 50 days or 120 days to harvest. This is the number of days from sowing the seed until it produces a harvest. When you know how many days are in your growing season, you can better select varieties that are suited to your area and time frame. Don't waste your time trying to baby plants that aren't adapted to your growing climate and season. I live in the Pacific Northwest, where it's too cold to grow okra and sweet potatoes. Could I try a large black grow bag or using solarization methods of clear plastic to heat up the soil? Yes, maybe someday. But it would take a lot of babying and extra work on my part without a high likelihood of a large crop if we have a rainy, cool stretch during the summer months. For this reason, it's very low on my gardening priority list. In the same vein, if you live in a hot climate, you're probably not going to have luck with snow peas and spinach. They like cooler weather. Using the list of foods you and your family eat often, see which plants won't grow in your gardening zone and cross them off. Here you will find lists of crops that do best in warm weather, intolerant of frost, and cool weather, handles frost. If you live in southern hot climates, avoid some of the cool weather crops. Many of them won't germinate, bolt quickly, stop growing, turn bitter, and immediately go to seed, or won't produce fruit if temps get above 75 degrees Fahrenheit. You may try them in winter depending on your average temperatures. If you live in northern climates, you may have trouble growing some of the warmer crops even in the summer months if you don't use a hoop house or other coverings on cooler nights. That said, there are usually some workarounds that will allow you to grow most of the crops you wish, which we'll discuss next. Cool weather crops will tolerate cooler daytime and nighttime temps, but don't handle hard frost. Cauliflower, celery, lettuce, potatoes will tolerate frost. Beets, bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, chard, garlic, kale, kohlrabi, leeks, lettuce. Cold hardy leaf varieties are best. Onions, parsnip, peas, radishes, rutabaga, spinach, turnips. Warm weather crops: beans, corn, cucumber, eggplant, herbs, basil, cilantro, dill, German chamomile, nasturtium, parsley, stevia. Melons, okra. Does best with warm days and nights. Cool temps result in low to no yield. Peppers, pumpkins, sweet potatoes. Soil temperature needs to be at 80 to 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit. You can do this in northern climates, but it requires using solarization to heat the soil and enough hot days throughout the summer for growth and harvest. Summer squash, zucchini, patty pan, crookneck, etc. Tomatillos, tomatoes, winter squash, acorn, butternut, Hubbard, spaghetti, etc. Microclimates. What a climate? So glad you asked. Microclimates exist naturally on your property, and you can even create or enhance them for your crop needs. They work very well when you may have a borderline growing environment for a specific plant. Almost all yards or houses have 4 particular areas. Southern exposure areas on your property or in your yard, especially tucked up near a house or shed, get hotter than any other spot on your property. If you're in a cooler climate, this is an ideal place to grow some of those heat-loving plants. When my rosemary plant was in the main garden area, it died every single winter. But when I put it in a large black pot and nestled it against our back deck, smack dab in the middle of our southern exposure, it's survived every winter and is now going on 5 years old. Behold, the power of microclimates. Eastern exposure receives the first light of morning, but usually moves into the shade come midday. This is perfect for plants that don't like to get too hot and tolerate some shade. I planted my sage in our eastern exposure area and it flourishes. Western exposure usually gets the afternoon sun all the way through to sunset. This is great for plants that require a lot of sunlight and tolerate the high heat of midday sun. Northern exposure is best for plants that don't like to get hot and can tolerate quite a bit of shade. Most vegetables require 6 or more hours of sunlight, so be careful if you have deep shade in your northern areas. We don't grow any of our vegetables or fruit in northern exposure with the exception of blackberries. We have invasive varieties that have been deemed noxious weeds by our county, and they don't seem to be deterred by full shade. Other microclimates occur in natural hills, slopes, and valleys on your property. Some plants need more water and will grow better at the bottom of a slope or in a dip where water will naturally funnel, but other plants don't like wet feet and will not do well here. On our property, the bottom of the hill is naturally protected from high winds. It receives more water, which helps in summer when water is scarce. But during the rainy season, Here in the Pacific Northwest, this would be pretty much mid-September through June. It can become waterlogged if the soil isn't draining well. Rocky areas, especially with larger rocks or cement, will naturally soak up the heat from the sun and radiate it. This is best for drought-tolerant and heat-loving plants. Our lavender and oregano do well in these spots. We also grow our grapes over the top of our cement patio. Windbreaks create a protective block from winds that can damage plants. We live in a valley, and during the winter, freezing winds funnel down from the Fraser River Valley in Canada when conditions are right. The old-timers here say, "The northeastern is blowing," and blow frigid gusts across our top pasture. We have a natural windbreak from the trees in front of our house, but the top pasture is wide open. When the hill drops down to the bottom pasture, it blocks the wind. This is important for protecting younger trees and tender plants. If you have a windy area in your yard or property, you can create wind blocks with a building, other plants and trees. Make sure you choose evergreen types so you have year-round protection, or even large rocks. Take note of the natural microclimates on your property to optimize your planting locations and add man-made variations if needed. Season extenders. Even though cold temps dictate our planting and harvesting, the use of season extenders can provide extra weeks or months of growing and harvest time. Season extenders are used in the spring and the fall. Our high tunnel, unheated greenhouse, gives at least 4 weeks of additional growing time. I can plant 2 weeks earlier in the spring and keep my tomatoes protected from frost by at least 2 weeks in the fall. In the winter, I'm able to grow lettuce almost all season long. There are many options that don't include a greenhouse or building. Frost cloth, sheets, or blankets work best for cool weather plants. If applied correctly, staked to the ground to trap heat, they will protect plants down to 30 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold frames use a window on top of an open box, usually made of wood or straw bales, to create a greenhouse effect. Hoop houses or mini tunnels use greenhouse plastic or row cover to insulate plants underneath. Individual covers in glass or plastic. Cloches. Place a milk jug, top cut off, or glass jar upside down over top of the plant at night and remove in the morning. No matter which season extender option you use, remember you need to monitor temperatures. Remove or open them when temps are warm and close them when temps are cold. Planning your garden space. 2. Planning your garden space. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 22. Taking the time to plan out your garden will save you a lot of angst and bring you baskets of bountiful harvest that much faster. I confess I've not always been a planner, but I've learned the hard way to spend some planning time up front to save myself and my poor plants later down the growing season. Work with the growing space you have. It's important to work with what we've got. We'll cover more on soil improvement later, but for now, let's focus on space in relation to your crops. When choosing where to place your garden or plants, consider these key things. Sunlight. Most of your fruits and vegetables require at least 6 hours of full sunlight a day for ideal growth. One mistake we made was planting our fruit trees in late winter when the maple trees didn't have their leaves. Come summer, the leaves from the maples blocked the sun, and we had to move the trees to a different area of the yard the following year. This stunted our fruit production by a full year due to recovery time after transplanting. Look at any buildings or tall trees and make sure they won't be blocking the sun come summertime. If you live in a really hot climate, consider areas offering early morning sun while providing some afternoon shade for less heat-tolerant plants. Water source. Even here in the notoriously rainy Pacific Northwest, we still water our annual vegetable garden in the dead of summer. When picking your gardening spot, make sure you have easy water access. If using hoses, the farther away you are from the spigot, the more hose you'll need to purchase. Keep in mind you will experience a decrease in water pressure at the end of the run. If watering by hand, it will take more time, and while you'll gain more muscle from packing the water, you might decide you'd rather gain muscle in ways other than lugging gallons of water to your plants. Runoff and slopes. Remember your microclimates? If you plant your vegetable garden at the bottom of a slope, most of the water, from a sprinkler, soaker hose, or rain, will run off and collect at the bottom. It's also important to look at the property adjoining yours. Will anything from your neighbor's land flow onto yours? If your neighbor sprays weed killer, is their property sloped toward your vegetable garden? Will it naturally flow and contaminate it? Next time you have a good rainfall, take a few minutes outside and watch where puddles form and identify any runoff areas. Are you next to a busy roadway? Plants here are exposed to runoff and vehicle pollutants. Available space. Maximize the available space you have. I know this sounds basic, but it's often overlooked. This involves choosing appropriate crops and varieties. An easy example of this is pole beans. I find pole beans are more prolific, a larger harvest from the same amount of plants, than bush beans. They're less susceptible to mildew and mold. I plant our pole beans near our squash so it can vine out among the beans, letting me use the space for 2 crops at the same time. Some crops require more space due to their pollination. Corn is one of these crops. It does best when planted in a square with multiples of at least 4 rows deep, instead of in one single line. Take a small amount of time to understand the growing conditions and preferences of each crop, and make sure you're placing them in the best spot with the space you have. Vertical gardening helps you maximize your space and can help eliminate some pest and disease issues. Growing crops vertically. Growing plants vertically has many advantages, including more food for the same amount of square footage and an easier harvest because you're not bent over the whole time and can see the produce better. Plus, it provides better airflow, resulting in less powdery mildew or fungal disease. Not all crops are suited for vertical growing. Some people will refer to vertical growing by simply meaning a plant is in a container and not directly in the ground, but that's not what I'm talking about. We'll go over container and raised bed gardening shortly. Vertical growing is when you put the plant directly in the ground and provide support for it to climb, allowing the leaves, vines, and eventually produce to suspend from the trellis in the air, not down on the ground. I prefer to put the support system in first and then plant around it. Not only does this save time because I don't plant and have to go back later to put in the support system, but it also ensures I don't damage the root system of the plant when doing so, and that I can position the plants exactly as I want around the base. Vertical support options. This is where your creativity comes into play. Anything tall and stable enough to support the weight of the plant can be used. Here are several common options. A-frame. Usually a wooden frame with either wire or wooden slats for plants to climb. Arbor. A wooden arbor over a walkway or covering a back patio or deck is the perfect structure for more than just climbing roses and wisteria, though both are lovely. We have grapes on our arbor, which provides us with shade in the heat of summer, and lovely grapes come late summer and early fall. Fence. A simple fence can provide support for vining plants. We prefer to use 2 or 3 inch square fencing wire between the poles. Chicken wire isn't a heavy enough gauge. Pole and twine. We use this method for our raspberries and tomatoes. We've also used it for our pole beans in the past. Place a pole at the end of each row, with a few smaller support poles at the halfway point if row is longer.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?